Hello, today, whatever today is. Let's start in the United States of America with change in consumer credit by category. Only three categories really here: non-revolving, revolving and student loans. At the bottom is the non-revolving. It was deeply in negative territory, but it's coming back up to being just about flat. And we can say, if it follows this trajectory, we'll soon be adding to the amount of debt in the United States. Revolving's doing just the same, but in a slower sort of slope. And the student loans, blue sticky up, we know have been increasing and increasing as the young have gone to get more education rather than fight into a workplace that doesn't want them. But that appears to be dropping off as well now. And that is the situation. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Oldest baby boomers face a jobs bust. Many older Americans fear that they will be working well into their 60s because they didn't save enough to retire. Millions more wish that they were that lucky. Without full-time jobs, they are short of money and afraid of what lies ahead. Deborah Kalick was a professor of biomedical chemistry at the University of Minnesota until she ventured into the private sector in 2000 with a job in a genome research. Probably picked up some extra money there, but she is now one of more than 4 million Americans aged 54 to 64 who can't find full-time work. The number has nearly doubled in 5 years, according to the US Department of Labor. Ms. Kalick, 60, has been unemployed since 2007 and lives in the Northern Californian home of an ex-boyfriend. She has run out of unemployment insurance, used up most of her retirement savings, and is indebted to relatives and credit card companies. A sad, sad situation, especially having to live in the property of an ex-boyfriend. And the rest of the article is quite interesting. It's so sad that these people thought that the world should just go on normally and everything would be absolutely wonderful, but it just turns out that it isn't. Worth the wait on the left of this chart. From the article, if your retirement age is 66, you can start receiving age 66. You can start receiving Social Security benefits at age 62, but with a reduction. Here's how much you receive if you wait. So you can see at 66 you get 100%, and those are the drop-off amounts if you go to Social Security early. And on the other side, that I've stuck together the jobs journey, average duration of unemployment for Americans at these age groups, 16 to 19, etc., and the 54 to 64, 56.6 weeks of average duration unemployment. And we have to really think, how many find a job after the end of that, or do they go over to Social Security or nothing? Retail sales, so important to the GDPs of the OECD world. In the background of this one, the blue wave, is the United States retail sales. And as you can see, they've gone from the dip in 2009, surprisingly, and has come up again to the 100 unit, where everything was linked in the middle there, at 100, all levelled at 100. And it's almost back up to retail sales where it was. The US GDP should be boringly about 2% or something. Other countries of note, Spain is the green one that's pointing so far down. It's 80, 20 units down from the 100. Very bad. And France is quite interesting in this one, that over on the far left of the chart it was at the lowest, and it's come up through the 100 unit linking number and is firing off and is the only one over the 100, and it's well over 100. It's almost up at 110, and I have no idea why the French are holding up there at all. The rest of them quite boring, but the fact is that they're not going up. So the GDPs probably won't be going up either. Alia, who's the one that does all this balance sheet accounting and has got a brain that works that way, I think he might be French. At least he writes very nice French. He notes in the short posts that he does like this a quite interesting thing. New Zealand requires all banks directors each year, as a condition of continued appointment, to sign a letter indicating that they have personally checked and are happy with internal risk control mechanisms, and thereby leaving themselves open to legal suit if something goes badly wrong. Such a simple mechanism, so cheap and easy to implement, and maybe it's worked for New Zealand banks. I mean, we don't know, but we can imagine the moral suasion, would we call that? That you have to go in and you have to sign that you have personally checked and are happy with internal risk control mechanisms. So if things go badly wrong, you are open to be sued. It's not a bad plan. In the United Kingdom, the decision by Shell, the oil people, Royal Dutch Shell, but they're on the London stock market, always have been. The decision by Shell to close its final salary pension scheme last week was deemed unsurprising by many commentators. Unsurprising it may be, but its significance should not be underestimated. The closure marks a defining moment for pensions and our financial futures. On Thursday, Shell became the last of the FTSE 100 companies to close its final salary scheme to new recruits. It said it planned to close the scheme next year in order to reflect market trends in the UK. Certainly is, reflecting the trend when you're the last of the 100. Existing members of the fund will be unaffected, as will all new employees who join the scheme, as will all new employees who join before the scheme is closed. Get in quick. And it's just another of these reflections, and you can imagine the younger people thinking on this and going, well, you get to keep your fancy pensions, but we don't. Is this right? And you got free education at university and we didn't, and we've got debts already. Is it right? Etc., etc. It's not easy being the younger generation, and I'm wondering if the older generation are really going to get away with this or not. In the United Kingdom, again, a report out yesterday, staff appointments via recruitment consultancies, and this does seem to reflect the employment-unemployment situation. Temporary contracts in orange and permanent placements in blue. And you can see the shape of it down in the Great Recession. Got out, almost threatened a double dip, but pulled back up again, but is now down below the 50 mark. The placements are not being made. I've thrown this one in here. It's an energy thing from Grigor. Prices for 1 million BTU of energy. So we're talking BTUs, British thermal units, I think so, yeah. And how much you get $19 you have to pay for Brent oil to get your 1 million BTUs of WUMF, yeah? Or $17.74 of WTI, slightly cheaper. UK liquid natural gas, that's compressed somewhere and probably tankered over to the UK, is expensive as well at 9. The cheap stuff in the world is North American natural gas there at $3 for 1 million BTUs. Coal is slightly cheaper. Coal is still cheap energy, and of course will be used. The point in this Grigor article is that the infrastructure in the United States is not up to using all this cheap BTU energy, and they probably will be tankering it away from the United States, so it probably will come towards the United Kingdom, and they might get cheaper North American natural gas to make their lives slightly cheaper. That's if the market works as the market often does, as it has to rebalance to a greater extent the WTI and Brent contract prices. Over in the Europe, I clocked this one because it's just the number. It's just zero, absolutely no percentage at all, and that's the interest rate you get, exactly no percent at that particular time when I clipped it yesterday, for 1 year German Bund. You can lend to the German government, and they will give you nothing. They'll give you your money back after a year. That's basically what it is. No more, no less. Counterintuitive, average hours worked. This is OECD, printed by the OECD organization. And the USA there is third from the right. Now, I'm not too sure who that is second from the right. FTA. I don't know who they are. But the only other one that's further to the right are the Greeks, GRC there at the bottom. And they work over 2,000 hours a year. Well over 2,000 hours a year. The Americans there at about 1,750. Very long hours. Compared to those people on the left, which is NLD, that'll be Holland, the Dutch, Norwegians and Deutschland, the Germans, third from the left, who are much lower, below 1,500. A lot fewer hours worked per year. And that's because they're efficient. They get their work done to earn enough money to have their life, and then they're off. I've worked in Germany and Holland, and it's just utterly remarkable. As there is a closing time or a finishing time, and they can be working away like beavers 5 minutes before, but 5 minutes after, in Holland they were just jumping on their bicycles in various ways, because there was a mass of people going out, jumping on their bicycles, and they're off home. I can imagine it, if the hooter is going at 5 o'clock, or that's the agreed time, at 5:30 they're smoking a joint after having made love with their spouse and got the rest of the evening ahead of them. They are efficient. Finish here with Europe's 39 trillion pension threat grows as economy sputters. So we know about the European economy sputtering, but this 39 trillion pension gap is what is often talked about in America, these unfunded liabilities. And of course the European governments do not have, the cash ready to pay these pensions, so they are unfunded liabilities. I'll go straight to the bottom. Germany accounted for 7.6 trillion euros and France 6.7 trillion euros of these liabilities. An awful lot of money has to be made in some way to pay out the pensions that have been promised. Now, I'll just finish here with a note that things have changed in Europe over the last 2 or 3 days. What we have now is the Italians, Mario Monti, who is the ex-Goldman chap that's been put in to get austerity going and really get the Italian economy under control. Under orders from the Germans, basically, has put through his first budget, which was an austerity budget. So he's established as in, okay, I can do these things. But now he's swinging over to the side of France. Sarkozy's done exactly the same. 2 now austerity budgets, but not deep cutting. But it looks like those two together, the second and third biggest economies in the Eurozone, are getting together and saying, look, Merkel, we are moving now into a recession in Europe. This is absolutely no time to be insisting on all-round austerity. And you can guarantee that Spain will back them up, and Portugal and Greece and Ireland, and there will be an absolute majority of countries that will not want to do any more of this austerity stuff. And they are going to outgun Merkel in Germany on austerity, and there is a very, very, very good chance that they will outvote any Germans on the ECB committee, and they will get the ECB to do some more printing as well. It was in its own way inevitable that the rest of them that are so used to this easy money would eventually get together and sort themselves out some easy money. There's going to be a fight, especially at the ECB, but they are overwhelmingly going to outpower any core nations that want to keep their hands off the printing presses. And the big question is, what is Germany going to do about it? I suspect not much. And we're going to get printing in the United States, and the UK is continuing to print, as is Japan. They are going to, as in central bank government treasuries, are going to continue to try and keep asset prices elevated around the world. Bye.